Campoli trying to clear it. Ball shoots, scores!
All right, Dan. Well, thanks for joining. And, obviously we got to know each other pretty good when I was at York University and playing there, as well as getting to work with you and the team. And obviously you've done lots of great things with the women's hockey team there. And you've been coaching there, I think 16 years now, right? So, the first thing I always like to do is just, kind of tell us a bit more about your background. Obviously you've got tons of coaching experience, with Team Canada levels as well, national levels, but I want to just share a bit about your story with coaching and your journey so far.
Yeah, well, I mean, such a broad question, but I
start from the beginning, how you got into it.
Yeah. Well, I like most people, as a kid, loved playing hockey, and my dad was from Ireland, and so he never played hockey and just watched it on TV. So I had to kind of beg to play, and I really fell in love with the game. So it was my first love and probably my longest lasting love, and my wife is aware of that as well. But I just fell in love with the game of hockey, and I played up until university, and had intention to play when I went to the University of Toronto, and I was not fit enough. I can say that now kind of in retrospect. I had never really trained at an elite level, and so I got injured and I got cut. And it was devastating at the time, but in retrospect, it also was one of the best things because it led me into coaching. And I started coaching with a friend of mine who was coaching in what was back then was called Central Ontario Women's Hockey League, and that morphed into the CWHL, and I coached the D for a year with the team in that league and a lot of Olympic level players. And I was like, wow, women's hockey. I never really seen it other than on TV, the pink jerseys in 1990, which is before most of the guys on this call I see. But and I just loved it. I loved coaching. It was another outlet for me. Apart from playing, that allowed me to be competitive, but also help people. And my mom was a teacher, and I always, I think, gravitated to that. My dad had a lot of, he helped a lot of people in his life, kind of at, not in a formal teaching role, but in a mentor role. And it just really spoke to me. And I was a golf pro back then. I was playing high level golf and touring golf. And in the winters, I had lots of time. So I basically got a job to support my coaching habit. And I coached. I got asked to coach at the University of Toronto and was there for 7 years. And then a full-time job coaching women at York came open. And I've been there. I'll be heading into my 16th season. So I've been coaching university hockey for 22 years, which is crazy.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So that's a pretty cool story. And it's, and then you've had some tastes at the national levels as well, and I think U18 and the national teams. Do you want to maybe just talk about what you've seen coaching at the university levels and the dedication and the mindset of those athletes, as well as some of the even higher levels at the national levels as well. Just kind of like over this period of time, and because you've had obviously a lot of experience seeing elite hockey players and athletes and coaching them and guiding them, obviously, and we'll get into even the what your team's done this past year, and you're up, obviously, congrats again on being up for Coach of the Year at York, and we'll get into that. But I'd like to maybe just do an overarching, just like some things you've seen over these last 16-15 years at York, plus even actually before that. But the elite athletes, obviously, you've got to work with a lot of them, so always like to kind of get everyone else's spin on mindset that way.
Yeah, it's interesting because the last little while, TSN's been replaying a bunch of Hockey Canada games on the women's side, and World Juniors and World Championships. So the 2012 and 2013 World Championships were on TV last night, and they were on the weekend. So on Saturday, my little guy saw me on TV, and he was like, "Daddy, what are you doing on TV? How can you be on TV here and at the same time?" It's like, it's a replay. But it was interesting looking back at those games, how much the game has changed on the ice, like just in how I coach, how we play. Very interesting to me to see the things that I still would do the same and things that we have changed so much in the game. So the game, and especially in the women's game too, I think there's been such an evolution of the athlete, and I think the same on the guys side, but especially in the women's side, the level of the athlete has just improved every single year. And I think in the women's side, you know, the Nagano Olympics in 1998, there was a real boom of players around that time where parents saw it and they were like, wow, and kids saw it and they were inspired. So, you know, the players that are playing for me now were born around that time. And so they've been playing hockey their whole lives. And I think elite level training and mental skills and nutrition, and the game is way faster, it's more skilled, the quality of player is better from top to bottom. There's no, you know, when I first started women's hockey, there'd be 2 or 3 dominant players on a team, and the rest of the team were kind of average players, or below average. And now there's no, like, all the players are scrunched into the top. So that's what I've seen. The change is like the level between top and bottom of any league and any team has really compressed.
Yeah, no, for sure. And what, maybe you want to just highlight some of your, you know, the mindset of some of your favorite athletes as well, in terms of, like, you know, we've talked a lot about, you know, treating it as a profession, and training like a professional, showing up day in, day out. I'm sure you've seen some pretty remarkable athletes at your levels doing that. And I know, being around your teams, I've seen some, and that's obviously transfers to their personal success and team success. But I don't know if you want to talk to just some of the mindsets and some of the unique qualities that you find that stick out. Like, I know you obviously have a big interest. I think it's training, your research and looking at resiliency and developing resiliency as well. But I don't know if you want to just talk a bit about some of those mindsets throughout your career.
Yeah. I think, you know, I have been really blessed to be able to be around some amazing coaches and amazing teams, and because of that, some amazing athletes. And when you coach with the national team, I mean, you're coaching the 20 best or 22 best players in the country in any given year. And that's amazing. And I've done that at several different levels, and to see that evolution, you know, as they move from under 18 to under 22 or development team, and then the seniors is really amazing too. But, you know, there's lots that stand out for me. I think, you know, like Haley Wickenheiser is an easy person to look at, because, you know, she's the face of Olympic athletes maybe in our country, you know, maybe the best female athlete that Canada has ever produced, and one of the best athletes, period. And what sets her apart is just like this ability to focus on a specific task and get good at it, and pour whatever she needed to into that to be better, you know, because I don't think, you know, Haley had a lot of good natural talent. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying she wasn't a talented athlete, but she was not the most gifted athlete. You know, there are some athletes that are born with gifts that others just don't have. But I think her true gift was her ability to work hard and to constantly challenge herself every day, every week, every year, to get better at small details. And, you know, she was just going to outwork anybody. You know, it wasn't so much, I'm not going to rely on skill, or I'll just be fitter and I will work harder till I get this. And that was amazing to see. You know, I have tremendous respect for that. And then, you know, people like Carolyn Willett and Jana Hefford, who they just do everything right. You know, all the habits on and off the ice, and how they treat people and how they treat their teammates, and their level of skill and dedication. You know, that was really awe-inspiring. And then, like, someone today like Mary-Philip Poulin, who's just an unbelievable athlete. You know, can throw with either hand and catch with either hand, and I've never seen a puck go past her in the air or along the ice. You know, she's just so gifted athletically, and how hard she works too, you know, and how humble she is, even though she's the best in the game. I think at the highest level, they're all talented, but what makes them great is their ability to think at another level, and to be, you know, have a task in mind and just work so hard at it and approach it and attack it from every angle. That's, I think, what's commonplace. And even with players, you know, like this past year, Aaron Locke, that played for me, who was our captain. Aaron was was so good because everything in her life she attacked with, you know, 100% intensity, and, you know, fitness and nutrition and her schoolwork, and just also wanting to be a great leader and changing what she's naturally good at. So they all have that ability to to focus and work harder than the person next to them.
Yeah, no, and I like that example there. And Locke, one thing we talk about, it's not absolutely, but generally, like how you do anything is how you're going to do everything, right? And like Aaron, that sounds like Aaron's a great example of like, we talk to a lot of athletes and players about school, right? And it's like, hey, like you got to be focused and give your best foot forward. And I know your teams, you've kind of done that, and instilling that in your teams has been one of the highest, especially at York. I know, like super high GPAs and lots of academics and doing really well there. But Aaron sounds like a good example of someone that's hey, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do my best at it, and making that a habit in all the areas of your life instead of it just some of them, like cherry picking when you're going to give your best effort. So, not sure if you want to elaborate on that, and especially again touching on it, the importance of school, especially as of a university coach as well. I'm sure.
Well, I think being good in all areas or having that kind of similar approach is just beneficial. I try to do that. I mean, I aspire to do that. We don't always, reach 10 out of 10 every day, but I think that's what makes me a good coach too, is my drive to be good at details and things like that. There's a guy I follow on social media. He's written some great books, a former Navy SEAL named Jocko Willink, and he has a podcast and a great YouTube channel, but he has a whole thing about how discipline equals freedom, and to be a Navy SEAL, you're an elite operator in the world of special forces, but, they're not, specifically gifted athletes or whatever, but they're probably where their gifts lie is their ability to just work hard and grind on small details and be good at them every single day until they get really good at, big things. But I love that idea of discipline equals freedom. Like the more disciplined you are, the more freedom you have in your life and how you approach things, because it just becomes a habit, really, is what it's all about, doing small things well all the time. And I love that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. And maybe we'll shift a bit gears more talking about, your resiliency. And you have so much interest there, and especially the journey of your team, particularly obviously, my personal knowing the team over the last handful of years where we had a lot of young players came in and the team was struggling, but, they were doing the right things and just coming short, like you said, like, losing games by a goal. And now they're doing the same things and now they're getting the outcomes in this past year and the success the team had. Maybe just touch on the team, but also that concept of, resiliency and embracing and focusing on the things they can control, and keep doing that work.
Yeah, I think in, sports and leadership and business go through these kind of buzzwords at the time. And, growth mindset was huge a couple of years ago, and it's still an important concept. But, the last few years, especially when you were working with us and around our team a little bit more, kind of on a daily basis, we always said you either win or you learn. And, I really feel like this year was the first time that I've had a team ever that could take the lessons and fail forward. That's another kind of cool term. And, you don't win a game, but what did you learn that's going to help you apply to how you prepare for the next opportunity, so that when you go into that, because, I think having a 5-year-old is also an amazing laboratory experiment, because you see how they react emotionally to certain things, and winning and losing, and losing is hard. Like no one likes it. And I see that, and I see the tears, and I go, I was like that as a kid too. And then I go, I think about, it is such a process to be able to learn that failing forward, like to actually embrace that as to get over the emotional part of losing or failure, and kind of make that into a strength, where you can, and that's like a Haley Wickenheiser, like, I failed at this, and I'm just going to, or Michael Jordan, I've taken so many shots and missed this many, so I can make it when it matters. And just the ability to press forward. So I think that resiliency and the ability to fail forward and to learn from our losses, and you have to be willing to risk loss. Like, I think that's the thing, when you're truly performing at a high level, and I know this from my own experience as a professional golfer, it was when I wasn't worried about outcome. I was focused on process and being in the moment. and you're producing lots of quality when you do that. And because you have to be willing to risk losing in sport. Like, you have to be willing to risk going to the gold medal game and losing, or missing the playoffs. And it's just part of the process of what we're all involved in and what we love. It's also, those moments are what we love about sport. It's just easier when you're on the right side of the win. But I think it's a huge skill to learn how to lose properly, and not necessarily like it, but to take what you learned from it and apply it as quickly as you can. And I think that was one of the reasons my team was successful this year, was every time we lost, we were able to apply those lessons to the next opportunity and do better.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I like the willing to risk loss. And I talk a lot about, you have to accept the possibilities. And, my favorite example, I think you might have heard me say before, but the samurai, right? And they're going to war and they're really well prepared. And they accept the possibility of death. Because there's a chance they have to say goodbye to their families if they might not see them again. And then because of that, they're able to fight fearlessly. And because the truth of the matter is they might die. And if you don't accept the possibility, you're not willing to risk dying, well, then you're not going to fight very well. And you're not going to be fully playing and putting yourself out there. So, and nobody wants to die. And in sport, nobody wants to lose, right? And often that feels just as bad or as difficult. But that's the concept. So anyways, I like the way you said that. And so it's always a good reminder for athletes to, you have to be willing to risk that loss, or willing to not get the goal or get the points or the outcomes that, they were aiming for. So no, I'm glad you brought that up. And then I don't know if you want to also just tie into, this year obviously was, your team did quite well, and, some of the other keys to success out of your team this year. And obviously it was a tough finish where you guys got halted, but seems like you guys have handled it quite well, and you're going to use that to move you forward and motivate you for next year. But I don't know if there's anything else you want to take out of this year, because, pretty special year, obviously, for you and the team, but just open that up for you that way.
Yeah, it was a historic year. It's funny because we didn't win a championship or anything, but it was a historic year for us. Yeah. And we went from being a team the last 5 years that was outside the playoffs every year, kind of in the 9th spot, not making the playoffs of the 8 teams going, and finishing kind of 9th 4 years in a row, and missing by a win or something like that. And you look back to, October, if we just won that game, or if we just taken a point here, and you look at the missed opportunities. And to being a team this year that was ranked in the top 10 every single week of the season. And we had two 7-game win streaks, during our season, and, got to the playoffs and went, won 4 games to make it to the OUA final, no losses in the playoffs. And we lost in the final. Played a really great game though. Like, we just didn't score, but we did everything, the right way, and all the analytics pointed in the right direction. But I felt going, because that qualified us to go to nationals, making the final. And that was the first time York had been in an OUA final in 20 years. And so that was amazing. It's what I wanted. It's the game I wanted to be in. And it wasn't the result I wanted, but I felt going into the national championship that loss was going to serve us better than a win would have. I think, again, we were our mindset, because we practiced the next day. I don't think most teams would have practiced the day after their league final, but the players wanted to practice, and we practiced the next day, and you wouldn't have known that we lost the night before. They were just all business, and we had a great week of preparation at the national championships. It was the first time York has ever qualified for the national championship in its 23-year history or 24-year history. Wow. So that was historic. And we had an amazing week of preparation. We were all set and ready to go and play Friday, and the tournament got canceled Thursday night, because of all this. But it was a hugely successful year. And why, I think I've thought about it a lot, why we were successful. We had great leadership. The players were really mature and amazing leaders, and brought that attitude of respect and ambition every single day. They were, we were skilled, so they worked hard to become the most skilled they could possibly be, and tap into all their potential. We were the fittest and strongest we've ever been as a team. And so, all those things were better than they've ever been. And that's something we've always been good at, but we were even better this year, and changed some things and challenged the conventional ways of doing things, but it really paid off for us.
Yeah.
And we had the most cohesive team that I've ever coached,
Yeah.
from top to bottom. And so over the years, I've thought a lot, and asked questions about other coaching colleagues of mine, why they've been successful. You never hear anybody say, well, we won, but what a bunch of jerks.
Yeah.
Or we won, but we had no leadership.
Yeah.
And so we hit all those things, and it paid off.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that actually leads in well, because I wanted to get, maybe if you can dive in a bit deeper. I know you've done lots of talks, and I think at the HP1, you talked a lot about leadership and cohesion, and maybe just diving more into some of the constructs and the tools you use and expectations you would have, because obviously a lot of the players want to be leaders. And I talk about you got to take care of your mindset first, but then also there's other leadership behaviors and things teams and athletes can do to come together and stick together. So I'll just give you an opportunity to maybe elaborate in any way you want on that leadership and team cohesion aspect.
Well, I think leaders create more leaders. And a good leader also knows when to follow. So I think of myself, and just as a coach, learning to be more self-aware and to take a step back and listen to my athletes. I listened to Nick Nurse last year after the Raptors won, and one of the things that they implemented was that the players could always come to him and address an elephant in the room and say, hello, elephant, here's the problem we're having.
Yeah.
And I think it takes humility as a coach sometimes to say, well, this 18-year-old or 20-year-old knows more about what's going on than I do right now. And I had that, and my players felt comfortable coming to me and telling me, I really think we need to do this, coach. And so we had a very collaborative relationship. But I think, our motto is Wanu for our team, which is there's a great book called Legacy by James Kerr about the New Zealand All Blacks rugby culture. And they incorporate a lot of the indigenous people to New Zealand, the Maori, into their culture. And Wanu is actually pronounced whānau in the Maori language, means family. And not just your immediate family, but your extended family and your ancestry and how that all comes. And so this idea that we have to be a really tight-knit team is the first point of kind of really focus of our team and leadership, is that you're there and these are your family members, and you need to treat each other like family members. And that doesn't mean you won't argue or disagree, but that idea of safe conflict and having a tough conversation that's going to help you get better, and certain ways to do that. And then I think the other thing from that book, that our team really loved, was this idea of this V formation. Geese fly in that chevron triangular shape because it's more efficient. The lead goose takes the wind, and the other geese can fly more efficiently, and they can cover more ground, and they trade off with those spots. And in the Maori culture, they say that's following the tip of the spear. So you can't have others going in different directions. And then there's an old Arab proverb about leadership that you'd rather have 1,000 enemies outside your tent than one enemy inside your tent. And there's two ways you can look at that. I think there's, within your team dynamic, about making sure you bring everybody into the same tent, that you're all of a like mind, and you keep kind of the naysayers out. And then I think it also speaks to yourself. Like, don't be an enemy to yourself, and let, like, what's the Gandhi quote? I won't let someone with dirty feet walk through my mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's the same idea. Like, I'm not going to be an enemy to myself. I'm not going to have one enemy inside the tent. I'll let all the doubters stay outside.
Yeah.
So I think leadership really starts from there. If you have a good concept of those things, it helps you build better leadership. But also, we work really hard on identifying areas that are strength. Most players at the highest level, they work hard. So that's easy to do. It's a lot harder to work hard and say the right things and act the right way all the time. And so I think a lot of it starts, though, from having high expectations of ourselves and being connected as a family unit.
No, that was really well said. And I know, you've got lots of experience here and pretty educated on it. One thing I did want to probe at was you said you did some unconventional things this year. You maybe just mind sharing and elaborating on that?
Well, with our fitness, so hockey is a very anaerobic sport. It's a very one work output to two or three rest,
Yeah.
for our hockey players that are out there. So you play a shift, you rest for a couple, you go back out for a shift, you rest for a couple.
Yeah.
We needed to get more aerobically fit, and how do you do that in a hockey season without wanting to go for massively long runs that take tons and tons of time? So
Yeah.
we started doing a half an hour a week in our practices of 3-minute shifts with 1 minute rest.
Mm-hmm.
It's the hardest coaching problem I've ever had. How do you get all of the players on your team to be able to practice a 3-minute shift with 1 minute rest? So we ended up playing kind of small area games in
Yeah.
3 different zones. And,
Yeah.
we would play a 4-on-4 and one, and a 3-on-3 and a 4-on-4. And they would play for 3 minutes and rest for a minute. And that's
Yeah.
hard when you're playing
Yeah.
hard against each other.
Yeah.
And then you have this
That's for
cumulative effect that affects your aerobic, and the players hated it the first few weeks because it's hard. It's really hard, but they
that'd be
saw how it,
exhausting.
they saw how it paid off for us in our play. And then they all said, I hated it, but I loved it, because it made a big difference. So that, and we built that because we knew we needed to get more aerobically fit, and they worked hard over the off season. And then we had to maintain that a little bit longer through the in season with our strength coach and our team there. But the other thing about that was, them buying into something that they'd never seen before in hockey, and to see that it would work. And if you win third periods in hockey, you win a lot more games. And that we had tracked that stat over a couple of years, and we weren't good enough in third periods. And so I think the number was, I think we were like, our winning percentage in a third period was .350 in 2018-19, and in 19-20 we were .650. So we more than 100% improvement in third periods because we were fitter.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And one of the lines you said, I hate it but love it, and I talk a lot about, and I would assume that probably helps with their mindset too, because I'm big on, and I talk to like swimmers in it, but like sometimes you got to do things you don't like doing, but they give you a benefit, and if you're going to do it, you might as well do your best at it too. Because they could have played those games like, begrudgingly be playing them. But I would assume they were like, they're playing games, so it's probably fun. But also like it's, if we're going to do this, let's do it the best we can. And kind of love it because, one of the things I preach a lot from a mindset about conditioning and training is like, you got to love the burn, right? Like if you don't like doing conditioning, you're not going to be a great elite athlete for very long, right? Like, you got to like training because it's, versus viewing it as some punishment and I have to go do training. Like, no, like it's, you get to do training and become an elite athlete. So I liked how you said that. I don't know if you want to touch any more on that, but
well, one quick story, if I could, on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So growing up, I had a friend that I played with, and his uncle played the NHL. His name was Greg Gilbert, and he had a really good career in the NHL and then became a coach, and from the Toronto area. But I idolized him because he was real. He was a real person, not just Wayne Gretzky or whatever. But I could actually meet him and talk to him and stuff like that. But he was a really hard worker, which is why he got to the NHL probably in the first place. And so many junior players are really skilled and whatever, but then they get to the NHL and they have to figure out, am I going to be that player? Or am I have to change my game and be a different player? And so he became a lot more of a defensive forward, someone that played bottom six type minutes. But the story was when he went to New York Islanders in the early 80s, and they had won, by the time he got there, they'd won 3 Stanley Cups, and then he won a Stanley Cup while he was there as well. But he turned to Butch Goring and said, when do we do the conditioning skates? And Butch Goring turned to him and said, kid, this is the pros. If you're not fit, you won't be here long. It was different than like in junior where the coach skated them and planned all their fitness and did it. And it's like you get to the pros and they do a lot more planning now, but it really is up to the individual to bring that. It's not up to the team to produce that. Like if you're not there, they'll find someone else who can do the same things you do. And then like a Haley Wickenheiser would look at someone and go, oh yeah, it's going to take this many hours. Like she wanted to get better at puck handling one summer. So she said, okay, she had this personal plan they had to give to the national team coaches. And she said, I'm going to do 3 hours a day in my garage of stick handling drills. 3 hours a day. Like so anybody that says that, you're like, yeah, you're not really going to do 3 hours. You might do 30 minutes or whatever. No, she would do 3 hours a day, and the average person would go, I can't do that.
Yeah.
But that's what makes her, she'd be like, yeah, no problem. 3 hours. That's what I'll do. And, go to it, put 100% effort into it.
No, for sure. No, and I love that. And especially with hockey, it's a great example. Like, all the players I grew up playing with, the guys that had the nicest hands, they're just stick handling nonstop, like just in their basements and garage. And it's, that's a big one.
And the ability to chunk difficult things into smaller pieces. Like that's Navy SEAL. Like what gets special operators through that hell week is not their ability because they have this capacity for hard things. It's because they can go, I can do this for another minute.
Yeah.
And the people that quit go, I can't do this for another minute.
Yeah.
It's such a simple thing, like listening to yourself or talking to yourself. Like, which do you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And that's, most people don't know how much more they can give. And then they gotta look deep and learn to push themselves harder. And that's a constant thing as all these players keep growing up. Hey, I can go harder. And then now that becomes the new your best. It's like, oh, now I can do it even more. So one thing I do want to get to, and then we'll start opening up to some questions, see if anybody has one. The other big one, I get a lot of players asking me about, speaking up to coaches. And so being a coach and also knowing, tons on, and you're a pretty educated coach, so you have a bit of a bias in there, but a lot of players often get afraid to speak up to the coaches. You already talked about that's an important area. It's like, hey, there's this pink elephant in the room. And but maybe just some recommendations there in terms of, best practices and what it's like from the coach's lens to speak up. Because I know I've always said from the coach's lens, like I want my players asking questions. I want them to come and talk to me, but you've got way more coaching experience than me at a higher level. So, and as well as from a leader's standpoint, I think that's such a big thing to bring up. So I'll just start diving into that.
Yeah, I think the relationship between player and coach is crucial for success and development. So both on an individual level and a team level. So development is not a one-way street. So I think for all the players on this call, you have to take an active role in your own development. So ask the questions about why you're doing things, and also express things that you feel you need to get better at, and ask the coach or the people around you, the team that help you, say, where do you see me where do you think I need to improve? Like, what are the things I'm good at, and what are the things I need to improve at? Like, I think everybody after every game should ask themselves, what did I do well tonight? What can I improve from my game tonight? And how can I address that in the next session? Like, if you can ask those questions on an ongoing basis, you're going to get a lot better. But when it comes to communicating with the coach, I think it's about having a good relationship and being respectful. And if you really want to get your point across without offending their sensibilities, because some coaches are more sensitive than others, is to ask it like a question. So if if you're seeing something that you think the team can do better, like, holding each other accountable, for example, that's always seems to be a hot topic, but you can go to your coach and say, and don't do it after you've just lost, give it some time. It might be at the next practice, and it could be phrasing it something like, I've been thinking about this, coach. What do you think about the quality of our practices? Do you think that we're passing the puck hard enough, or do you think that we're vocal enough, or whatever it is? And then the coach can go, you know what, I don't think we are. And what did you think about that? And then you can give your opinion. It's an easy way to open a gate into kind of giving your opinion. And so one of the examples from this year, which was really hard for me, because, I had an emotional weekend as the coach, and I felt really bad about it. And I actually apologized to the team for my behavior, because every mistake they made, I was on them for it. And I always say that I want to create a culture where they can make mistakes and learn from them, but I didn't give them that. I was very critical of mistakes. And so I apologized to them on the Monday. I had enough awareness to do that. And then one of my players came to me and she said, you know what, when you're emotional like that, you get on the refs and it doesn't help us. I don't think, we don't think you should talk to the refs. And I didn't like it at the time, but I was like, I sat there and I tried to listen to what she was saying, and I digested it, and she was right, though. She was right. And I'm glad she brought it up, because it helped me. It helped me gain some awareness. But I think the more respectful you are of your coach, the more you have these kind of discussions and you ask good questions, the easier it is for them to accept your point of view, and for them to also explain why they might be doing what they want to do. And so you gain a better understanding of some of the process that's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I like the idea of asking good questions, and that's a good way to also build trust. We had Matthew Maone on last week and did the podcast with him too, and got a great recording. He's got a great story, but one of the things he talked a lot about was just like, especially as he moved up his hockey career, is like he was asking the GMs and the coaches like, thoughtful questions, and that helped him to kind of assess his situations on where he wanted to go and playing there and creating those relationships with the coaches. And I'm big on like, if a player is not certain with a coach, it's like you can be respectful. And like the classic line I have to, for everybody listening or listening to the podcast is, you can want more playing time instead of going like, coach, I think this is unfair. It's like, what can I do? How can I learn? Or like, and especially like you said before, what can I work on, coach? Like, and it's just opening the dialogue and being willing to open up. And because often a lot of players, especially a younger player, or if you're at a new level or a new coach, like it's like, oh, this, like you get intimidated by the coach, and you don't want to let them down. And but it's important. And I don't know if you maybe talk on it, but I'm sure like you end up gaining more respect for those athletes that are willing to speak up, right? And they're willing to, wanting, this shows that they want to learn, and two, it also shows that they want the team to improve and learn too. So they're interested in all of it. So I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to add to that, but I think that's
I think
cool
with players sometimes, a lot of the criticism for the coach comes around playing time. Mm-hmm. And it's so much more readily available now to see, oh, this guy played this many minutes, and there's apps to look at that in minor hockey now. And everybody wants to play as much as they can, and everybody would like to play more than they did. But a coach always wants to put his best team out on the ice too in critical moments. So if you're not one of those players, the question should be, what do I need to do to earn your trust in those moments? Because that's why you're not out there. Like there's a reason, maybe it's that you don't take care of the puck in your own zone, or you make careless turnovers at the offensive blue line, or you panic and, you need to work on having more poise. And sometimes too, like it can be like preseason, you just share the time equally because that's what you need to do as a team to get better. So I think it's not about how many minutes you play, but making the most of the minutes you do, and training like you're going to play 20 minutes a night if you're a forward, or 30 minutes if you're a D, so that when the opportunity comes to play more, you can make the most of it too. Like there was a lot of criticism when Mike Babcock was coaching the Leafs that Austin Matthews wasn't playing enough minutes. He wasn't fit enough to play more minutes. So, like there's a curve that they show about Corsi and point production. And after 41 seconds, you might as well not be on the ice, because no one produces points after that point.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same thing. You can play 20 minutes a night, but if you're only good for the first 17, the last 3 don't matter. So, I think it's asking those questions about, what do I need to do to improve? How can I be better? Like my dad would always say, if you're going to point the finger at somebody, there's 3 pointing back at you.
Yeah.
So if you're not playing the minutes you want, what can you do? Can I be fitter? Can I be mentally more resilient? Can I be a better leader? Is it my body language? Like, what are the things you can control to make that better?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I love that you brought up the word trust, because that's the big thing, because you might be playing well lately, but you still haven't built that much trust, and trust is built over time. And trust is also built by asking those questions and gaining and being open with yourself. So
yeah,
awesome. Well, I've got lots out of this already. This has been